This is the Vulture, designed by CoreDynamics in 3301 with seemingly only one item on the design brief. That item was to effectively make a battle tank in the chassis of a small hatchback. Did they pull it off? Oh, hell yes. First things first though, who the hell designed on the name Vulture for this ship? It's true that the Vulture is a bird of prey, but it's a bird that's known for eating carrion, dead and dying flesh. This Vulture doesn't need to settle for scraps. This thing is more than capable of hunting, killing, and taking its fill from pretty much any target out there. Aesthetically, it's not the prettiest ship out there, beauty being in the eye of the beholder and all that, but I like it. It's got an aggressive looking streak to it, but not in the same way that the FDL does. It's less about the smooth curves of a bow and more like a blunt heavy object such as a hammer. You don't look at this and think about it making accurate swipes at you with a sword. You look at it and think about it drunkenly hurling a brick at you in a fit of rage. It's a different type of aggression entirely. It was clearly designed around the idea of throwing the largest possible guns into a small frame and making everything else secondary. The interior isn't bad either. It's surprisingly spacious for a small ship with a central seat for the pilot and a single offset seat for the co-pilot. Basically, it's the same sort of seating arrangement that I wish was in the Cobra, the Python, the FDL, etc. There's a reasonable number of ship kits for this ship if the default shape isn't to your liking, and there's a decent number of paint jobs that you can use to make the Vulture truly your own. I'll be brief about its hauling capabilities, just don't bother. Unshielded, yes, you can get 60 tons of cargo, but it's got such a poor jump range that once loaded, it'll take you an age to get to your destination. It's not worth mining in it compared to other ships either, because while you get 2 large hardpoints, it is only 2 of them, and for the money there are so many better options in this price range. As for exploration, you won't be making any long jumps in the Vulture, and by default it only has an 8-ton tank for fuel. So if you're happy with that, fill your boots. Just be sure to carry a fuel scoop and plot your route accordingly. Otherwise you'll end up calling upon the fuel rats who may ask what the hell you're doing so far from civilization in a ship designed for nothing apart from combat. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about combat. For combat, this thing is an absolute monster. What this ship lacks in number of hardpoints, it makes up for in size of hardpoints. It's also got 4 utility mounts so you can equip it with some defensive tools for in case you bite off more than you can chew. Weapon convergence is a little looser than I'd like. You can use fixed weapons with it, but it's something to bear in mind when hunting smaller targets like a Viper. That being said, this thing can slay targets all day long with fixed plasma accelerators, especially if you can make use of its agility and sit right on the tail of your prey. Its base armor and shield strengths are among the highest out of all of the small ships, so you can take a decent amount of damage before you need to run, or worse, if the enemy can get a bead on you at all, that is. The Vulture is highly manoeuvrable, and can quite happily sit on the backside of most ships and irritate them. Like a pin stuck to a chair, except you're the pin and the target is the butt trying to sit down. In fact, the only things that are more manoeuvrable are ship-launched fighters and the Eagle Mark II. It's not all good though. The stock power plant options are woeful. CoreDynamics spent so long shoehorning the weaponry into it that they forgot that weapons need power and waited until everything else was in place before realising they needed to find space to put a power plant, and the space they found was about the same size as a shoebox. You've got a couple of options. The first and trickier option is building the ship to eke every last useful percent of power and shutting down modules in a combat situation if you don't need them. And the other option is to simply engineer your power plant. A small overcharge can make a world of difference in this ship. Next up is the canopy. It gives a huge field of vision, even with a little bit below the instrument panel, but it's also a huge bullseye for someone if they want to remove you from the fight. It's easily mitigated in most cases though, you just need to remember to attack from behind and avoid jousting where possible. I've had a few issues with heat management too, but one of my builds does involve a large oversized beam laser, so a lot of that is down to me being a moron more than anything. Finally, in spite of the Vulture's excellent manoeuvrability, the speed could be a little bit better. Under boost it's actually quite good, mine's knocking about 500 meters per second with grade 4 dirty drives, but running off the main drives leaves a little to be desired. Speaking of the engines, from certain angles they can sound a little bit like they're going to fail any minute. Think like a petrol engine running on less cylinders than it should be. It just sounds a little bit ropey. Just have a listen. price isn't too bad either. When CoreDynamics initially released the Vulture, they were asking for a frankly ludicrous 21 million credits, putting it between the Imperial Clipper and the Federal Assault Ship. But after a while, the sales team from CoreDynamics left their crack den, sobered up, and settled on a far more reasonable 5 million, placing it between the Asp Scout and the Asp Explorer. Insurance on the basic frame is about $250,000, and with upgrades mine is sitting at about $1 million, which is pocket change when you think how this ship can earn that in about 20 minutes in a Hazraz. So the question, should you add a Vulture to your hangar? If you're a person into combat, then absolutely. For everything else, not so much. It's not so much a jack of all trades, master of none, than a master of one very good, very violent trade and a jack of pretty much nothing else. Aside from canyon running, it's good for that because, again, maneuverability. In truth, it took me a long time to gel with this ship. It's a ship I'd work on for a bit, then go back to flying my Viper 3 for my small ship fix. It took me a long time to understand why this was, and I think I know now. The Vulture is exceedingly capable in a combat situation. Subjectively, it's not ugly, just different, and has the maneuverability for fancy flying. On paper, it is truly excellent at doing what it was designed for. But for me, it lacks charisma. The Viper, Eagle, and even Sidewinder are the scrappy underdogs, fighting to their dying breath for each percentage point of hull removed from the enemy, having to work hard to keep out of the firing line because one wrong move can be the decider between victory, and having to explain to the insurer exactly why you thought a Sidewinder could take on an Anaconda. And for this, for me, they all have charisma in spades. But subjectively, for myself, the Vulture lacks this aspect, and that's what my problem is. It's not the looks or the capability. If anything, it makes combat a little too easy in some situations. If you do stray into the firing line, it's not usually a problem. The armor will take it and you can get right back on their tail and continue unloading, and that's why it's not the most charismatic ship for me. Despite this though, I stand by my earlier conviction. If you've got the coin and you're after some combat, go out and buy one. Judge for yourself, tell me why I'm wrong, unless of course you agree with me. With everything said and done, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's taken a little while getting here. If you liked it, there are more ship reviews on the channel with more to come, so take a peek. Plus, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, all of that guff for the algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. Fly safe, keep some spare change in the glove compartment for a rebuy, and above all, wear sunscreen. Take care and 07 to one and all.